I struggle with small talk. I mean, I do it when I have to, but I really struggle with small talk. And Dennis gets it. Like, it was a relief when he said he understands, because sometimes I feel like I'm cuckoo. Because, it just feels like, as an immigrant, it just feels like there's so much you need to achieve or stuff you need to catch up with. And even though small talk is necessary, it just kind of feels like it's just you I don't know what the right word is. But if you're out there, you're an immigrant, please let me know if me and Dennis are the only ones who kind of have this struggle where you're like, I don't know if I have time for this right now. But yeah, let's get to it. Now, I'm just going to first ask the question. Did you think about the weather when you are moving to Canada? Like, when you chose Canada, was weather like, oh, the weather can be funny? Was that part of your conversations?
Not really. Honestly, when I was moving to Canada, I just wanted to move somewhere. I just had to have a fresh start, and I wasn't doing that much research, or like that wasn't one of my concerns. It was a surprise, though, for sure, because of that.
But I mean, you're from Ukraine, right? And
Yeah.
I know that it gets pretty cold there too, right? Is it which is worse, Canada, Ukraine? Which is worse?
I'd say Canada for sure, because of the length of the winter and how much snow we have here in Alberta. I feel like Ukraine is more of a, I don't want to say BC winter, but something like that. It's more humid there. It doesn't get as cold in terms of the temperature, but because of humidity, you still feel cold. And we do have snow, but again, not as much as here.
Yeah, because I mean, I somehow in my head I used to assume that Ukraine kind of had the same winters like Russia. I don't know.
It depends, I guess, where in Ukraine too, right? Like
okay.
Ukraine is the size of Alberta, like very similar. And we have, a little of mountains, we have some sea, but then the middle part of Ukraine is pretty flat. So, but overall, yeah, we have 4 distinctive seasons, and I think here in Alberta it's more like 2 seasons, right? Right from winter you jump into summer. So, yeah, that's the biggest difference, I'd say.
And okay, so good. So building on that, what you said about you just wanted to move, was it easy? Was it hard? Or was it just like, yes, I'm just moving. I don't care. Like, I don't care all I'm experiencing right now in the moment of trying to move to a new country.
I'd say the move itself happened quite fast and easy. Maybe, I guess I just got lucky, because I know some people spend quite a bit of time, sometimes even years preparing to move, applying for different type of residency applications. For me, it was like a New Year's resolution. I decided that, I want to move to a different country and try something else. And then one of my friends said, hey, I got to know this immigration agent who can help find a job in Canada. I said, okay, sign me up. And so basically in pretty much like 6 months, I was in Canada.
Okay, that's fast.
Yeah, so that part was really fast. And considering I also did like my English, I studied English all my life, but then after graduation and started to work in Ukraine, and sort of English went in the background, and so I had to like do a refresher, get all the paperwork, and that part maybe was a little stressful just because it was like short timeline, but it happened and I moved. And at first, like everyone else, I guess, what is it? Pink shaped glasses, like everything is great until you start to listen to yourself and maybe learn some other things. So then, yes, that was an adjustment afterwards for sure.
We're going to stay on this for a bit because, I call that phase of immigration the honeymoon phase. Like, there's a part in when your immigration journey where everything is beautiful. And then at some point, it hits you like a sack of potatoes. Like, gosh, like this is hard.
Yeah, for sure that happened.
When was that moment for you when you're like, okay, like this is tough?
I'd say it came in stages, partially because when I moved to Canada, I moved to a small town. It's called Olds. So my first year was in this town of 8,000 people, and I spent there. So the first sort of difficulty was, I guess, with most of the newcomers is, especially when English is not your first language, it's just inability to express yourself. Like you losing part of your personality, and that was an adjustment. That wasn't as fun, but I'd say within a year I moved on from that part. But then maybe partially because I went to school, right? I went to Calgary to SAIT, and then once you just immerse yourself in this environment of speaking, writing, reading in English a lot, then like I just got very comfortable. But then the other transition was about how do I convert like all of my experience from Ukraine into something like tangible that can help me get a job in Canada. And I think that was a harder hit for sure. That I'd say I struggled for some time, but I guess I was lucky to meet some people who encouraged me and helped me believe in myself. So that's in a short. I don't want to make it a monologue.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, it's monologues usually make the best parts of this conversations. I'm going to come back to the school part and transition and all that stuff, but I want to stay on that 1 year in Olds. Like, how did you handle that time? Because I can just imagine when you want to say something and you don't have the full range of words to say what that thing is, or you're just like, okay, like how do I express myself fully? Like, how was that 1 year for you? Did you ever regret like, oh, why did I make this move? You know, all this,
No,
like, what was
not
going through your
really.
mind?
Yeah. I don't think I regret that move for sure. It was not easy, but I'd say people were generally nice around me, and like there were some stories that I made some mistakes that I can't really share out loud, but because like in a conversation with customers, because I came to work in a hardware store, and
Yeah.
I was working at the paint desk, and I was eager to learn new words, and some of them didn't come out the right way. And then the customer just at some point of time just looked at me, turned around, and went away. And then
Oh.
the next week, our employer, because there were 8 Ukrainians working there, so our employer offered us English courses for free for all the Ukrainians. So then all of the guys were blaming me. It's like, Dennis, that's you, just because of your experience with that customer. So now we all have to do this. But I mean, again, just the gesture itself, just the free courses,
Yeah.
that was nice, and a lot of people were still understanding. So I'd say also was actually not bad. It was like a slower pace, a smaller community. I never felt like an outsider, although I mean I knew that I'm an outsider. Like my culture and background is very, very different, but no one would really make it an issue.
Yeah. I think you raise a really good point about maybe sometimes it does make sense when you're moving and you just trying to settle in and you move into a place that is slower paced. So I can just imagine if this was Toronto or Calgary or Vancouver, that you went through, like the pace there is faster. It's just a different culture. Maybe it's a bit harder there than when you move to a smaller town. Everyone takes their time and everyone has the patience to wait for you to find yourself. That sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on the personality in terms of like the communication, because a couple of Ukrainian guys who were there, uh, I think they were like mentally comfortable with the level of vocabulary they have, and they just used it really well to express. And like the simpler the better sometimes. So that's what it worked for them. But in my head, I was like, all these words that I know in Ukrainian, I just was thinking of translating them on the go, and it didn't work well. I stumbled a lot. Yeah.
I've heard this thing. Someone said to me sometime that the worst thing you can do in English is to try to translate your native language to English. Like
Yeah.
you just go confused because sometimes like in Nigeria we learn English first. Like I learned English first and I learned my native language. But every now and then sometimes you see this beautiful phrase in your native language and you want to find a way to say it in English. and then you just start to stumble. Like, so like I've just learned to stop doing that because I feel like every single time I struggle. Now I want to come back again. I'm still staying under your first year. How did you feel like the first week, first month, new country, moved so fast, 6 months? Like, how did that first week, first day, first month feel for you?
It's I'd say, as you said, honeymoon stage. It really won me hard, and I was just like not seeing any negatives. Um, I'd say I was surrounded by good coworkers. There were some, I guess, Ukrainian guys too that I didn't totally feel alone, and I was still able to speak in my language to someone. So in that way, I think that was a good piece. So I had some sort of someone who can understand me, and I was able to express myself well. So that played a big role for sure. Although like I never thought about it in a moment, but now reflecting back, I'm just thinking that that really helped me
Yes.
to have like a healthy mix of exposure to Canada and Canadian culture, and still having that sort of comfortable way to relax and wind down, and just share with someone who understands my culture and background in my own language.
Yeah, you make it really like you had it. That's a really good soft landing because I was talking to someone yesterday about code switching. How when as an immigrant, when you come to a new country, you're switching between the new culture and your culture, and it can be mentally exhausting to just kind of skip staying in that other part that you're still learning. So if you just have that balance where you can come back to, you can be yourself without any airs, without trying to say, am I saying this right? Did I say that word properly? Should I greet them this way? Just with people who understand you, it kind of helps you just adjust slowly and much better to the society.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this because like in Ukraine we're a bit more direct, or I should say quite a bit more direct than in Canada, and like we just get to the point, right? And without meaning any sort of like you don't mean any offense to the other person. And I remember
Yeah.
I use this as example now in my current work, which will I guess come back to that later. But example of the like customer service expectations of local culture. I was chatting with my Ukrainian coworker, and we were standing in some of the aisles, and we were just like really work-related conversation, just trying to figure out what to do with a certain piece. And then I see the client coming back from one of the sites, and I say to my coworker, like, because we were speaking Ukrainian, like, hey, could you slow down? There is a client, and he was like completely fine, but then he turns around and he's like an older guy who has like really thick accent, and he just like turns around and right ahead asks like, "What are you looking for?" and the customer like, who's Canadian, he just like, "I'm good," turns around and like walks away. And so that's something that I use now to as a story, like importance to say like, "Hello, how's it going?" Just the small talk, and then sort of you get to the point of the conversation of but
That is so funny, to be honest.
mhm.
Okay, now let's speed on to now. So you got into
Mhm.
Calgary site. Why did you decide to move to go to school? Just asking.
So at that point of time, so I came on a work permit to Canada, and I think my original plan was to so it was 2-year permit, and I was supposed to extend it for another 2 years. So I was thinking to sort of save up some money and go to school eventually anyway, because that was sort of the easiest time to immigrate at that time. So again, I came to Canada in 2013, but then I got an opportunity to borrow money and go to school faster. So I was thinking, like, you know what, I might as well just speed things up. And yeah, so school was sort of like in a picture for sure, as a better way to immigrate to get my permanent status.
Yeah, that it's always a much easier way. Now, so you spent 1 year in Olds, you've settled in, you
Mhm.
had all the Ukrainian friends and all, and then you go to
Mhm.
school.
Mhm.
I know you had earlier said to me that school was a bit more interesting. There are people, it's just speaking, writing English and all that. But how did it feel moving from that comfort zone you had into Calgary, bigger city, more people, maybe more immigrants, but just different expectations? Like, how did that feel for you?
Definitely more challenging. And again, at first wasn't thinking of that. But I was sort of the first out of the Ukrainian crew that was in that hardware store to move out. And the first half a year, I was just like completely by myself there. And I guess the way I work, my brain works, I was just like really focused on studying and maybe just a little socializing with my schoolmates. And that was, I guess, challenging in a way, but like at that point I was sort of prepared for it. So I can't say it was too big of a deal, although at moments it did feel a bit lonely. But then one of my Ukrainian friends and coworkers from that store also came to study at SAID, so we moved in together as roommates. So it was a little bit easier afterwards.
And now that just because I feel like what you're saying to me is that like it was lonely and all that stuff. What were your biggest cultural shocks while trying to settle into school? Like, what was the thing that would hit you and you'd be like, no, I don't understand this?
I'd say at first I didn't understand much the amount of team projects that I had. That was just like, and yeah, it was just like just let me show what I know, but then you're supposed to like work with other people, and I understand now that, and I actually appreciate it because it makes you learn more of working in a team environment, and so then you're sort of more ready for actual job environment because you rarely work by yourself. So navigating yourself around other people and getting to the common point is important, and I guess school projects are a big part of it. But yeah, and the other thing I guess about that, what made it a bit more difficult. Yes, I'm older. I was like 26 at that time, and there were a lot of younger students, like 18, 19 years old. Also, just Canadian maybe didn't, and they weren't exposed to newcomer culture or maybe a newcomer. So that just like finding common language was a bit more difficult. But I guess I'm always like thinking about what's my goal here. So I sort of didn't let those distractions happen. And a lot of times I was actually leading to the project itself, like a project manager, I guess, like what needs to happen. So yeah, but that was definitely I think the biggest challenge of that first year of transition to school environment.
Now I hear you on that, but I want to challenge you on that challenge. You say the biggest challenge. So just you had mentioned something about being lonely, and it was just you at some point. Because I feel like your first 1 year you were balling. Like balling is a Nigerian term for you enjoying yourself. So you were balling your first 1 year. Now you moved to yeah, you learned something today. You moved to Calgary to school. You're by yourself. There's all these kids who probably don't fully understand where your culture. I mean, there's also the fact that you're probably much older and you have to kind of learn to kind of work with people much younger than you. What did you miss most about home at that point? And what did you miss most about your previous 1 year working in the hardware store at that point?
I feel like I still, in terms of talking about something I missed from home, I still wasn't able to express myself well enough, or like to connect well with like on a personal level with Canadians. And actually, yeah, I feel like I missed this point, but that was something that I feel like in Ukraine, you open up with certain people much faster, like, and you get on a personal level much faster than in Canada. And in Canada, you can, I don't know your neighbor for like several years, and then it would be still a stranger to you who you just occasionally say hi and, I don't know, talk about weather. So that part was still, I guess, a pain point that I sort of missed from Ukraine. Although I did get some school friends, and I actually tried to participate in team projects mostly with Canadians. I felt like that was a push from inside to immerse myself in the culture. And in terms of missing something from the previous environment, from being in Olds, I guess, as you said, I was bowling in a way, in a countryside way, and I missed that ability to relax more because at school you go doing full courses, and then I was fortunate to not work in the first year, but then it sort of caught up to me because I actually do need to work to provide for myself.
Yeah.
And so then the ability to juggle work, school, and then looking for work in my field. But at some point, like it wasn't bothering me because I really started enjoying myself because it started to work out. But again, it was a not straightforward way, and it took me some time to get to the point where I can enjoy being busy and doing it well.
Yeah. You raise a really important point about that Canadian culture thing where you can have a neighbor who's been your neighbor for 5 years, and all you talk about is just, hey, how's the weather? The dustbin guys came around today. They didn't pick up your dustbin. Like, so there's this small talk thing. And I was saying to someone that there are two things, and I agree that small talk is important, but it feels like being vulnerable and open sometimes is not exactly a thing here. Like, people, you have to do small talk before you get to being vulnerable and open. Unlike back home, where, because in Nigeria it's like that too. They're just people where you just meet and you all just kind of connect and just open up to each other and talk and stuff, and everything is fine. And then the other thing that happens also is just that I feel like as an immigrant, especially if you come and you're much older, small talk is not you actually feel like you don't have time for small talk because you have goals, you have targets to meet, you have stuff you need to do. So small talk, I don't want to talk small talk because it happens to me too. So you're consciously saying to yourself, okay, just have the small talk, but you feel like you don't have that time for that small talk.
I can totally understand. Like, this is something I still struggle sometimes these days when I'm like preparing to meet a client or someone in the community, and just like, don't jump in, into what needs to happen. Just like take your time, and or always email with some emails. When I reread it, I'm like, okay, now I need to add a little bit something. The small talk at the very beginning. It depends. Not with emails, it's a bit different, but yeah, that for sure is. I don't know if I ever will be like that. Maybe just who we are, right? Like,
Yeah. Maybe our kids are different. Will be different or something if you ever plan to have kids. But I feel like ourselves will always be the in-betweeners. Like, we'll never be the full, because you're not fully Ukrainian anymore because you've lived here since 2013. Yeah, but you're not fully Canadian because you aren't born here. So you're just in between somehow. That sort of thing. Now, so Calgary School. What happened next? Like, did you get the job you wanted to get? Did everything come as you wanted it to happen? Or was it like, oh yeah, I still need to kind of walk through this journey and find the kind of work I want to get?
Well, I think I tried to get the job right after the first year, and basically when the summertime was coming, I thought of getting a job in a field, right, in a bank. But being on a study permit, I had some limitations, and again, I was doing it sort of in more of a Ukrainian approach in terms of job hunting, and it didn't work. And I heard only from one bank where I had a connection. I just got lucky because one of my classmates was working in one of the big banks, and so she sort of introduced me to someone. But then it sort of didn't work out because they're like, oh, you can't work more than like 20 hours or 25 hours, while in school. Doesn't work for us. And then I started applying for summer jobs again for like accounting because I'm like, well, bookkeeping. I used to do that. Why not? And then, I didn't know where else to apply. And so it was pretty like a spiral downwards of keep getting rejection and rejection and rejection, and eventually I went back to work in a hardware store for summertime because I was like, you know what, I need to get going somehow,
Money.
and like to it. Yeah, money is still something I need to think of, but at that point I got to a place where I was sort of full of self-doubt, like am I still able to do this type of job. It's just like you start questioning every single part about yourself, like maybe it's my accent or something. I'm not enough, basically. That was the message in my head. And I think I got lucky by I met this person who is like a friend of a friend of a friend, and so we went once for coffee because actually she was looking for some like advice or support, and I feel like it turned out into the opposite, and she actually realized that I am like, although I'm trying to help, but like things are not that well with me, and so she gave me this like motivational boost, making myself believe in myself again, and like dream big, and not give up. And after that, like things just started sort of falling in place. I did go to something different. I started doing. I went to the Toastmaster club, the conversational club, and but after that, there was another story that I share. And I like to share it too. I was again, I still felt a bit low, and I was at Safeway putting groceries in my trunk, and then I hear the car stops behind me, and just like it stays there. I was like, okay, so I turned around, and then there's like an older lady sitting in a car, and she's like, hi. So I'm saying hi, and then she passes me the envelope, and she said, this is for you. And I was suspiciously looking, as like, are you sure this is for me? And she's like, this is for you. So I take the envelope, and then she just drives off. And then I don't know what to do. Like I don't know, like all kinds of thought. What if dangerous for me in some sort of what? So I'm like carefully trying to open it, and then I open it, and just to find out that there is like a small like envelope or like a card with a gift card inside for like Tim Hortons. But then on that Tim Hortons card, there was a quote. The only difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is the way you see them.
Gosh.
And like I still can't explain why that happened to me and how that happened to me, but that was like so timely. And so that was like a final boost. I was like, you know what, I can do it. And then the whole like second year of school, I was just like so driven, going to all of the like networking events. I ended up having like 3 part-time jobs, and it does seem like a lot, but I wasn't really doing like maybe 2 hours a week, but it made me feel busy, made me believe in myself. So then when sorry, I took a long route to answer your question, but then graduating with a diploma, going to the end of second year, I applied only for 4 jobs with 4 banks, but I got the interviews everywhere because again, I learned that I need to write my resume in a different way. I need to find someone in the company, seek for referrals. And yeah, like I really strongly believed in what I want to do and why I can do it. So then I was at a place where I could pick, which job I want to take. And so at that time, I landed a job with RBC, and so I've been with them ever since.
Man, Dennis, that story you just told me now, I'm getting chills. Like, what? Like, you don't know her from anywhere?
Yeah, I never met her again. But I still have the card.
Damn. Yeah, you should keep that card. You should tell that card. You should frame it and keep it. Because, like, that is some story, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really fortunate, I guess, I don't know how that happened, but it was really, it's just a quote, but just the way it came into my life, and
yes,
and the time also.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I want to talk about your RBC experience at RBC as an immigrant and how it shows up in your work. But I want to first ask something you mentioned. If you had to describe the difference between job hunting in Ukraine versus job hunting in Canada, like what's the difference?
I think the major one is the way you write your resume and just the approach to positioning yourself. Like in Ukraine, I would just focus on all my biggest achievements, and then regardless where they were, well, like what kind of job they were, and I would sort of have that sort of like one resume, but it just like has all the heavy hitters, like all the best things about me. And then I would sort of, in my mind, I would be like, here, employer, look at me, and you make a decision if I sort of can do this job. But then in Canada, it's a bit different, and it sort of makes sense to me too. Like you have to focus on the job itself and show the necessary skills that you have for the job. So you're doing it for the employer. You need to show them whether you can or cannot through the experiences or through your skill set. So it's slightly, and that's why it takes more time to sort of write the resume. That's why you have to tailor it, even when it's a similar job. But that definitely gives you more traction. And that's a part of the job right now of my role as well. And I do see more traction from people who I help with this type of advice. And it's pretty common, but still a lot of newcomers, when they come, it's hard to step back and not mention some of your biggest achievements because they might be not relevant, but you really want to mention it because you're proud of yourself for that. But
yeah. So now that you mentioned, now that you talk about that, can you tell me a bit more about your job, like what you do? I know you do some work. I know you do some work with newcomers in Canada for RBC, but like, what does that mean? How do you all do it? What do you all do? Just that sort of thing.
So it was a bit, again, I'll take a little detour maybe before I just jump to my role. Something I like to mention overall that to my surprise, when I started working with RBC, I was still on a work permit, and there is a separate HR team that helps this foreign workers. So they connected with me and they asked me like, what's my next step? Am I applying for permanent residency? Am I applying this way or that way? Do I need any kind of documents? And I was like, whoa, I haven't even thought about it. My work permit was 3 years, but they really sort of like pushed me and provided with some information. So that was really helpful. So I did appreciate RBC on that side. And I hope some other companies have that too, but don't want to point fingers. But other part that sort of changed my mind about like self-esteem, I guess, when I started working, I still was a bit skeptical about my accent and I don't know, the way I choose to express myself. And then when I learned that, there are so many other colleagues who are also newcomers to Canada, and some of them much stronger accent, or, maybe grammar is not on the same level as I would personally like to be for myself. And they were like employee of the month, so, like having high achievements within the bank. So that was really encouraging to see that, like, if you know how to connect with people, how to perform, how to do your job well, like side things like accent or the words that you choose to express yourself, they are not as important. So that definitely was sort of a boost. But now coming into what I do in my role, which is I lead a team of newcomer specialist advisors. So we have teams like this across Canada. There are about 15 teams. And so our whole goal is to be connected with newcomer clients and newcomer sovereign organizations. And we do provide banking support. So in terms of like opening accounts, if you need to, but it's different way. We don't have this like pressure of like having only 1 hour. We're more flexible when we want to meet, where we want, or the client wants to meet, or whether you bank with RBC or not. You just want to talk about something, about questions about finance. We're happy to answer that, because like financial literacy is really the way we connect with newcomers and newcomer organizations, because for them, it's an important part of sort of settlement process, right? Understanding the banking system, not making mistakes, which I'm pretty sure most of us did, or maybe didn't use all of the opportunities that were there. And so that's like what drives us to connect with immigration agencies or service providers. We again host different type of workshops or info sessions, and I find that quite fulfilling. Because yes, you do help people, but also for myself personally, in terms of job experience, it's a fun role to be at, because every week is different. It depends on how you plan it. Like sort of you create opportunities for yourself. You've connected with a new service provider. You plan something with them. It's a lot of relationship management. But again, you still have this. You support newcomers further, and sometimes they become your friends. And they, like, I had so many instances when I helped a person to open an account, but then he started working for a staffing agency, and then he reached out back to me, and then we did the workshop together. Just because it's like a big, it's a big village. Calgary is a big city, but it's still a big village. It's all very well connected, and it's cool to be part of this ecosystem, if you wish.
Yes, that's so beautiful. I mean, I like the idea about immigrant helping immigrants find themselves. I think the last question I have for you is and it might be a two-pronged question, but I'll see if I can just ask it as one question, which is basically like, seeing all you're doing right now, the access to information you have, and the various kind of immigrants you've spoken to who are trying to find themselves. Like, if you had to talk about the how to hit the ground running playbook for someone who's just coming to Canada, like, what are the top 3-4 things they need to kind of keep top of mind as you're trying to settle in?
That's a loaded question. As a banker, I want to reply to you that it depends on your needs, right? Like, understanding what your priorities are.
And that's fair. Please reply as an immigrant banker. That's okay.
Because, like, really, you might have a family, or you might be by yourself. You might need to travel, or there are many aspects, but I guess there are still some common things that I could suggest. And just looking back from my own experience is, I'd say connecting with the community, with your own community, is important, because there are people who've been there, done that, and they can share some of the information that you might know. So that's like, you work smart, not hard. You find someone who's done some of the mistakes and can help you, and that can be any cultural organizations, or maybe immigration agencies like CCIS or Immigrant Services. They all have those free services, and counselors who are willing to help you. And then again, they will do this need assessment. So I feel like the main important part is like to stay connected, to not feel like you're alone, because I know it's hard sometimes to do that first step and just go to the new place, new organization, and just ask for help. But there are a lot of people who understand exactly how you feel, and they are normally looking to help. Even at my team, all of my teammates are newcomers. And again, like, yes, we are bankers, but we rarely start talking to a person just about banking, like, straight up, because it's really not like, yes, it's important to have the answers, but it's not the way you connect with someone, and it's definitely not the way to keep someone as a client. Sorry, again, I answered in two different directions, but I guess, again, to sum it up, it's just like staying connected, and maybe connecting with several places, like cultural groups, church, or whatever suits you best, but not staying alone, and staying connected to people who are there, willing to support you. And there are a lot of them, to everyone's surprise, I guess. But that's the part I like about Calgary.
Yeah. Kind of building on that, this is probably just a follow-up question. I think you've talked about this a bit across different places, across parts of the conversation. But like, what are some of the things you see that immigrants get wrong or struggle with, or newcomers get wrong or struggle with when they just come to Calgary, or when they just come to meet you?
There are some, I guess, myths that you can find online about certain, so just information specific, right? Like about banking or about some government programs. So that's, I guess, a common mistake to not verify your information or to just trust one source. You know, unfortunately sometimes even, and that's something that comes to me as, I guess, as a professional in a banking world, and also being graduating from SAID, where there was like a heavy emphasis on what it means to be a professional salesperson. Like, because everyone thinks of sales as like as a negative part. I don't know. Like there is a little bit of that about, but it's really like, I guess it's more of a name. You really are there to solve problems for people in a way that in that industry that you can. And so coming from there, like you still don't have the same experience whether you go in any of big five banks. You know, in one branch you might get slightly better or fuller advice. So that's why even when you like reach out to this sort of trusted advice providers, I would still, you know, look for a second opinion. And I think this is a big part for a lot of newcomers, because a lot of further actions or steps that they make are based on that initial information, which sometimes, you know, is not correct. So like, do your homework and then do it again. I'd say that would be my big advice, because I don't want to pinpoint like one single thing.
Yeah, I get.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good point, because gosh, like we are. That's so true. Like people just say stuff, and if you're not careful, they either give you outdated information, or stuff that worked for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you, because you have a different circumstance, you have different issues, you have different stuff you need to solve for. You know, so I like the idea of do your homework and then do it again.
Yeah. And yes, it does take some time, and you don't always have it when you just arrive. But it's something that you need to be ready. That, like, you know, you're the first time in Canada, whatever it is, like 2 months or half a year or a year. But it will be a bit more challenging, and it's important to, yes, remember to enjoy this new place, but also to stay focused on your goals, because I definitely done that. I was like traveling almost every second weekend to mountains, and now I don't even remember when the last time when I went to Banff or something like that. But
all right, thank you so much, Dennis. This was so good. Thank you. It was really good talking to you about your story and how RBC is helping immigrants find themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dozis. Thanks for the invite. You were a great host. It was a pleasure chatting with you as well.
I still can't stop thinking about the story he said of the lady who gave him a gift card and something that had a quote on it. Like, gosh, like how did that even happen? Like, you know, we tend to rationalize everything, so maybe that's what I'm trying to do, but maybe some things are just irrational. They can't be explained. But thank you so much for getting to this point of the podcast, of this video. Please like, share with your friends who might find this useful. If you know someone who would enjoy this or who would find this useful, please share with them. If you have someone who you think we should talk to, please send them our way, and I'll reach out to them myself. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.